advertising. The next biggest group that I wouldn't have guessed, with 49%, is transgressive signs. Transgressive is everything that's applied in public space unauthorized, so tags, graffiti, stickers, and so on. Then there is infrastructural signs, which is all information given, basically. Regulatory signs, it's all about what you're allowed and not allowed to do. Then there's commemorative signs. There's the word memory hidden in that, so who or what is remembered in public space. I always like to look if I find women on street signs, for example. It's a fun thing to do. And then there's artistic signs, which is a small group. And from a preliminary counting, I can say that 85 or 90% of the data we're looking at is layman work. So where is that region? It's close to the Dutch border in Germany. It has 5 million inhabitants in total, in an area where all the cities are kind of grown together. And the really special thing about that area is that it's the biggest migration area in Germany. So it has had 3 big migration phases. The first from 1850 with industrialization, people came to work in coal mines and steelworks. Then after the Second World War, people coming to work in industries such as car production. And then from the 90s onwards, it's mostly asylum seekers coming to that area. So it's a very diverse and multilingual area. One would expect. In our 26,000 photos, we find 38 languages. But we know from research with primary school children that there are over 100 first languages spoken. So we know already that there's a lot out there that we can't see visible in public space. So the theoretical backdrop of the entire project is linguistic landscape research. And what these researchers believe is that the linguistic landscape not only tells you in an instant where on earth you are and what languages you're supposed to know, but it provides you with a unique perspective on the coexistence and competition of different languages and their scripts and how they interact and interfere with each other. So what this basically means is that text in public space does not only have an informational function like guiding visitors and marking space and representing the law or seducing customers. So there's moreover a symbolic function, like a space is never no man's land, but always somebody's place, like Blommert points out. And one of the things they're really stressing is that languages in the urban environment indicate the status and the relative power of a language community. It has to do with a symbolic acknowledgement of ethnic and cultural diversity. So it's at the core of the theory that the representation of languages in public space is of particular importance because it relates to identity and cultural globalization. And another thing that is very visible, of course, besides the central aspect of multilinguality, is the relationship between public authority and civil society. So there's a constant dialectic of power and resistance at play that becomes visible. Okay, why are all these professors and all us research assistants spending 3 years on researching this? What do we want to come out with? So, of course, we want to analyze the increasing multilingualism and the spatial distribution of the languages and their functional significance. And then what is very important to me, how visible languages in the city represent acts of identity creation and social recognition. And at the end, we're publishing a lot of stuff, and one big publication at the end, and we're creating a very big geo-reference database that I'm going to show you in a second. And of course, one of the aims is to influence the regional language policy. It was an incident that I dropped into that project. I wrote some things before on type in public space, and the professor said, "Oh, that's so interesting, why don't you? We're doing something with language, and this somehow has to do with forms, so why don't you come and have a look what we do?" And I started being involved there, and we have sort of a very fruitful relationship. And I'm trying to make the point that that in this project and in linguistic landscape research as a discipline, it would make a lot of sense to look at the forms. If you want to find out more about the forms and the functions and the motivation and the assessment, it makes sense to analyze the graphic gestalt or the typographic shape, because our language research here is materialized language. So I put a quote here from Johan Järlehed, who is, I think, the first person who made a symposium on typographic landscaping 2 years ago, and who states that typographic choices inevitably carry social meaning, and that it's something that definitely has to be researched more. So I've just chosen these images to make that point. We all know that very well, that if a bank would look like a pub or a pub like a kindergarten, there would be severe orientation problems in public space. So this kind of shows how typographic decisions have some social relevance there. So the area in my research I looked at particularly is Dortmund-Nordmarkt. It's a mixed residential and commercial area as well. And it's the area which has most residents that don't have a German passport, like 43% of them, and 70% have a migration background. So that's where we find most Arabic script in public space. So what are my questions? The four I'm going to talk about today. On a quantitative level, I wanted to know how the different type styles are distributed between the types of discourses. And as well how, and if type styles would appear equally between languages. And on a qualitative level, I'm interested how typographic means can be a tool for identity creation as social positioning. And what happens to cultural identities in urban environments through globalization. Before I go to my first findings, I show you quickly the methods. Of course, there is this database where 5 of us spent 18 months tagging each individual image for categories like shape and size and languages and type style used and material. So then you can go and search for certain criteria and get your results. And since of course, we do data analysis and draw a lot of graphs. And since the data is geo-referenced, I know exactly where each item is. And I can go back and place things on a map to get a better look how things work beside each other. And I sort of made up, like every type of discourse has a little symbol, every color has a language. Other way around, every language has a color. You see, I'm nervous. And every type style a little letter, so I get an understanding. Of course, I do visual analysis, and mostly I do this to generate questions, which I then turn into questionnaires, and I go back into the city and I perform on-spot interviews with shop owners, like sign producers, which are shop owners or graphic designers, or mostly just sign makers. And then with passers-by about their associations, motivations, etc. So my first findings from quantitative analysis. We are looking at Dortmund-Nordmarkt here, and we see all infrastructural and regulatory signs. So this is all top-down communication. This is all the information that the government places in public space. And if I have a look at the languages, you can see from row 3 onwards, you probably just see that everything's yellow. Yellow is the color German. Yellow is the language German. So you see that... And I'm incredibly fast. I'm already done, and it's just 11 minutes. I should speak slower. Sorry, translator. We see that the government basically only speaks German. And if I look now at the type styles being used, I find that 165 of 166 items use sans-serif typefaces. So this is a very clear win for sans-serif in that type of discourse. If I now compare this to all commercial signs in the area, here I see color coming in, and color means languages. So green is Arabic, blue is English, red is Turkish. So this is bottom-up communication. So this is not only where all the language comes in, this is also where an enormous variety in different typefaces and type styles being used. So if one would like to argue that social actors apply different typefaces for different types of discourses because there are different communicative means, that would prove already that there is some semantic relevance to a type style choice. And if I have a look at how the type styles are distributed between languages, I see that there's a clear win for sans-serif typeface in this area. But there are some particularities. Like, for example, we find a lot of Turkish texts that use serif typefaces, mostly on posters and stickers. And then there's a great variety in scriptoral, handwritten, and display typefaces in Spanish texts. And then there's things like, which is on one hand very clear, black letter is only used in English and German, but on the other hand, that's a very interesting thing to be followed up. So I get these indicators, but what quantitative analysis does, it generates questions. I don't know yet why it is like that, so now I have to go back to the space and talk to the people and find out what motivations are. So this is the first impression. Now, looking at qualitative analysis. Since, I don't know if I should say that, but the ladies in the morning, they were really hard to understand, but I kind of felt that I was looking a lot for literature that could help me establish certain understandings about shapes and their meanings in public space, and I found a lot in language sciences, and I didn't find that much in typography and graphic design. So I'm going to state here two linguists. One of them is Hartmut Stöckel, who's written very well and extensively about that, how graphic signs generate meaning through their shape. And he's basically saying that it's in the variability of form that typographic signs generate a secondary meaning system. And it's always related to the choices someone makes in relation to them. And then as a second person, Theo van Leeuwen has written a great article, Typographic Meaning, where he explains very well how typography has historical, cultural, and social connotations, and works as a resource for meaning making. And where he makes links how the chosen typefaces, the materiality, the size, can be links to certain historical, cultural, or social events. And I've again placed these pictures out of our corpus showing a Gothic typeface that makes a certain link in a religious context of a Luther parish, a sign of a butcher from the 50s, like a handwritten, looks a bit like a signature to me, trustworthy, and then a boycott graffiti all over the facade of a bank in times of financial crisis. Sort of a social connotation happening there. How does this become socially relevant? And this is a very simple answer by Jan Blommert, who's again written a fantastic book about discourse. And he basically says that every difference in language can be turned into difference in social value. And I would argue that the same is true for typography. You can say the same thing many different ways, but if you say it in a different way, it sort of becomes something else. And here I placed two examples that I like particularly of saying, do not park in front of this garage. You can say that in many different ways. One thing I was trying to understand how social positioning as identity creation in public space could be at work. And I've taken the stance triangle by John W. Dubois, who says taking a stance is actually a three-part process. There's first a subject, like a person, evaluating an object. So it could be a typographic sign. And thereby the the subject positions itself towards that object and at the same time aligns or disaligns with other people who evaluate something. So if I take, for example, one sign I particularly like at the top left corner. So there is someone who cuts him or herself letters by hand to imitate a well-known brand. And that kind of shows that he pursues to look, or he makes himself a substitute sign with typographic means, and aligns himself within a group of people who have such fancy Marlboro kiosk signs like the one in the bottom. So this was for me a way to have an attempt at how social positioning could be working. And this is my last example, and I hope I'm not too fast, because in my trying outs I was never that fast. Sorry. What could I say about cultural identities and in multilingual and multiscriptural urban environments in the context of globalization? So what I'm trying here now is I've taken a theory, thoughts by Stuart Hall, and looking at my data and seeing if I find Stuart Hall's ideas represented on a scriptural level. So what Stuart Hall says, in globalization, 3 things could happen. First thing is homogenization. So local identities, national identities are weakened and disappear. The second thing is localization. So in contrast to that, particular identities are reinforced in opposition to globalization. And the third thing is a mix of the two. It's actually a term coined by Roland Robertson, which is glocalization. So there's like a combination of different hybrid forms of identity that appear. So how could I find homogenization on a script level? And since I just started learning Arabic, I looked at a lot of Arabic examples that I found in our corpus. And I found letters that were brought together in a way, not only on the left image, that's a bank, they were brought together to sort of equal each other, not only in terms of stem width, but mostly in terms of typographic levels. Like in Latin, you have 4 levels, and in Arabic, you could have up to 12. And they were kind of set beside each other to work well. And then I found text where all the kashidas, like all the connecting lines between letters, were missing. And then like this last image, the bottom line looks to me like someone applied a cursive distinction on Arabic text where this actually does not exist. So there are things sort of homogenized there. In the field of localization, like a reinforcement of national or particular local identities on the script level, this is a very obvious group that you all know, like the cliché national type style. And of course, there is some stereotypical construction of the other happening here. So Edward Said is kind of ringing a bell. But still, I find an interesting group to have a closer look at. I found it particularly when I realized that in the bottom image, there is an Arabic typeface imitating like an Asian style, which I thought was, I don't know, it's just foreign. And this is one of the next things that I'm going to do, that I'm going to cross the content and the type shape and do questionnaires about that and see where actually the realization of which is comes from. And trying to find or having a look at if I see hybrid forms. This is one of the signs I did extensive interviews on. This is a female fashion store, a Turkish female fashion store. And I thought that's interesting that at the bottom part, it looks to me like there's a serif typeface, and in the top part, it's something else. Like there's a shift from stem width from vertical to horizontal in the top. And it looked a bit like Arabic calligraphy to me, but I was not sure if this is just me seeing it. So I went out in public space and I performed interviews. And of 16 passers-by I talked to, 5 of them stated that they see something calligraphic, Oriental, Arabic in that logo. So obviously that shows that this sort of combination at play there works and is visible. Okay, I'm going to wrap this. Whoa, hello. Okay. My computer thinks I'm done. I'm not quite done. Hello. See, you see my life. It's good that I show it to all of you. Yeah, okay. Give me a second. I wanted to sum up with 2 thoughts. Do you bring me water? Do you think that helps? That's very kind of you. I wanted to... 2 thoughts at the end. This linguistic landscape research is a big area of research. They have a magazine that started this year called Linguistic Landscape. And they have had a big introductory article, and they were talking about all the disciplines that should be involved in researching linguistic landscape. And guess what? Designers and graphic designers and typographers were not part of it. And I think, we should change that because we can learn a lot from linguists, and they can learn a lot from us. So let's mingle. Is one of my last thoughts. And the other is that, of course, in a lot of the theories I've read throughout my MA, there's a lot about globalization leading to unified standards, but on the other hand, I see so many different cultural codes and multiple styles that, of course, we designers can make pluralism visible, and that's the last thing I wanted to say. Thank you.
Any questions? Moving the other way. Can you pass this back?
Of who?
The last one. Who's the writer?
The writer.
No. Yeah.
This one. Gorter Martin Menzel. But I have a whole, if you give me I can send you the bibliography. You have yeah. If you want anything, write me an email, I can send stuff to you.
So the question I have is, in the hand-rendered type that you encountered, was there a particular leaning one way or the other? Like, was it more ethnic, or was it all sans serif attempts, or were there sort of some more very sort of strange hybridizations that you found in the sign painting?
I find it all, actually. Like, I find... least hybridization, I find a lot of localization in terms of using of flags and symbols and religious signs. That's something but I wanted to bring it to a script level here. But there's a lot of colors as well at play.
So do you largely see the hand-painted sign as a cultural artifact?
What do you mean? No, I don't.
You don't?
I didn't particularly look at the hand-painted sign. It's actually all print work, I think. Is there a particular sign we're referring to?
No.
Okay. I'm afraid I didn't get your question right.
Hi, it's a great research. It's very nice. Did you find any examples of hand lettering that is clash with each other from multicultural perspectives? Let's say one culture writes something and others change it or manipulate it. And this is the kind of a good area of understand that what they are talking about.
Yes.
Sometimes political things, sometimes other cultural things.
Yes. Well, in transgressive sign, there's a lot crossing something out, writing something else on top. Then it's very interesting which part is translated. and which typefaces are used for certain parts of information, because it's not always a full translation. Certain information is given in certain languages.
I believe that in some part of the Germany there are Turkish and Kurdish. There's political problems. I believe that those problems is on the wall of the
yes, it is.
The streets.
I'm going to come back to you. I don't understand it, but I see a lot of signs there, and I know it's something Kurdish, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah. It's happening in Turkey, in Istanbul too.
Yeah.
Some people write something and the others, change sometimes, not erasing it,
Yeah.
and then encountering it with adding extra things.
Yeah.
So this is interesting for us understand that the social situation through the typography.
Yeah.
Could you maybe quickly summarize the answers you got from the shop owners concerning the choice of typeface? Were they more like, did they do it consciously? Like, I wanted it to look whatever, German or something? Or was it more like, I just like the shape or the color?
So far on the typeface, I have to say it's 50-50. I have mostly younger people that say I wanted it to look exactly. I come from Morocco and I wanted it to look like that's something that reminds me of. But then I also have people who simply say that's the font I have on my computer. But if there are two fonts, we could say there's a choice. So if there's just Arial and Times New Roman, that's already a choice because they're different associations. But it's 50-50.
So there was something like a Gestaltungswille, a will to design.
Yes, definitely there is. I want this to look like, or their name Vorbilder, examples they like. I like this movie and they used Trajan, and now I use Trajan as well because it's classic. They do things like that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
More questions? I've got a quick one.
Yeah.
You showed the map of Dortmund with
Yes.
First the signs that the government,
Yeah.
the voice of the government, and
Yeah.
then you show the ones which are commercial signs,
Yeah.
which show social life.
Yeah.
And there's a big part of the city where the state seems to be absent.
Yes.
So there's a power vacuum there. I'm curious, are you mapping the presence of different kinds of signs to perhaps demographic qualities, income levels, education levels, and so on? Because it seems that the Bundestag, so he's interested in this bit and doesn't give a shit about this bit.
Okay. No, he is present in that bit as well. I couldn't, these signs are happening in a width here, and I had to line them up there. There's a sort of, it pushes my items out. You know what I mean?
Who lives here? Because they can spend money,
Yeah.
but the government doesn't put any signs there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't.
Actually, you're not living south of the...
Yeah.
She's trying to explain that she could
Yeah.
put
I couldn't
box
fit.
in each other.
I couldn't fit those ones
They are
in
not
here.
there.
They're actually here, but I couldn't fit them in there. Sorry.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Okay.
But still, people after row 5 can't see it, so I'm a bit in a graphic design problem there. Yeah.
There's very interesting potential in
Yes.
the kind of information you can get from the geotagged images you have there.
Yeah. There would be also very different ways of visualizing the stuff that I'm working on, that I take little houses and I make stripes for colors.
Yeah.
So I get it on the spot and not distribute it. I have
Thank
to do
you
that.
very much.
But, yeah.